Welcome back to True Ghost Vault. Tonight, we go beyond the firelight, into forgotten cabins, into cursed trails, into the woods where rules were made to be broken and punished. These are not just campfire stories. These are memories. Stories of what happens when curiosity crosses the boundary and something far older answers back. And once it sees you, it never looks away. Story 1. We play hide and seek, but no one ever found Danny. We weren't supposed to be there after dark. The counselors made that clear every summer. Stick to the cabins, lights out by 10. No wandering past the tree line. Especially not the north woods. The ones past the rusted arch, where the path splits into gravel and shadow. But rules break easy at Camp Grayson, especially when you're 12 half drunk on marshmallow sugar and ghost stories and trying too hard to prove you're not scared. That night, the air was too still, thick with pine and sweat and something else we didn't have a name for back then, something that made the back of your neck itch, even though the air was dead calm. We were 10 kids in the clearing, 10 kids playing hide and seek, and 11 shadows. Danny was the one who suggested it. Of course he was. Always the loudest, always pushing boundaries like he couldn't feel consequences. He'd broken into the storage shed the week before and dared Ben to eat a live beetle. He'd peed off the dock in front of 2 counselors, just to see who'd yell first. So when he said we should play a real game of hide and seek out past the arch in the woods no one talked about, we said yes, even though our guts said no. Peer pressures like that. He called it campfire rules. Campfire rules means no flashlights, no backing out, and you have to go where you're drawn, he said, eyes bright with something more than excitement. You have to listen. I remember the way the word drawn felt when he said it. Heavy, wrong. We laughed anyway, and when Danny counted down from 30, we ran. I didn't even make it 100 feet in before I started feeling it, like the trees were too close, the air too cold, and the dirt under my feet just a little too soft. There was no moon that night. Or maybe there was, and we just couldn't see it from inside the wall of branches. Either way, it felt like we'd passed into something older than camp, something watching. I could still hear Danny calling out, counting too slow, dragging it out, like he wanted us to get lost. 22, 21. And I swear the numbers echoed in different directions. I ducked low, under a rotten log, crouched in the dark, breathing through my shirt to hide the sound. That's when I noticed the silence. No insects, no breeze, no footfalls, just the sound of someone breathing behind me. But when I turned, there was no one there. Someone screamed in the distance, short, muffled, cut off too quick. Then the counting stopped, and I realized Danny never hit 0. We regrouped back at the fire pit after an hour. One by one, shaking off the dark, scratching mosquito bites like they might peel away the fear. All of us came back except Danny. We thought he was hiding. Then we thought he was playing. Then we started to panic. Ben said he saw something tall between the trees. Said it didn't have a face, but had a neck like a lamppost. We told him to shut up. Jules swore she saw Danny's red hoodie deeper in the woods, except it wasn't moving, just hanging, like it was nailed to the air. We searched all night. No counselors. We were too scared to wake them. No tracks, no jacket. Just 10 kids standing at the edge of the trees at dawn, realizing no one had found Danny because maybe he hadn't been hiding. Maybe he'd been taken. We lied to the counselors, to the police, to our parents. We told them Danny must have wandered off during free time, maybe chasing a deer or trying to scare the younger kids. We said we thought he'd gone to the canteen, that we hadn't seen him since dinner, that maybe he took the trail to the old dam. None of it was true, but we said it anyway. Because what were we supposed to say? That we played a game we weren't meant to, that we followed a kid into the woods after dark, and something there counted with him, that the shadows outnumbered us. They wouldn't have believed us. Hell, we barely believed it. So we went home. Camp ended early that year, cancelled for investigation reasons. Danny's photo went on flyers. We all gave statements. We all swore we were telling the truth. And then we went on with our lives. At least we tried to. Something changed in each of us after that night. Jules wouldn't go near wooded areas anymore. Ben stopped speaking for a year. One of the twins wet the bed until high school. And me, I started hearing counting. Not every night, but enough. Always slow, always distant, always stopping before it reached 0. I kept expecting someone to jump out of the dark and yell, "Found you." But no one ever did. 12 years later, I got the letter. No return address, just my name, written in the exact crooked, angry handwriting Danny used when he carved his initials into the mess hall bench. Inside was a single photograph, all printed on paper that smelled like damp earth and iron. It showed the fire pit, nighttime, empty, except there was a boy standing just outside the light, wearing a red hoodie, head turned sideways like it was listening. I didn't sleep that night, and I didn't tell anyone. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what was written on the back. A single phrase in dirt-smudged ink, "Still hiding." I thought it was a sick joke, some elaborate prank from one of the others trying to process the trauma in their own messed up way. Until I saw the news article. A boy had gone missing, another camper. Different state, different year. Disappeared during a game of hide and seek. Same age, same time of night, same red hoodie. His name wasn't Danny, but the photo they released, he looked exactly like him. Older, wetter, grayer, but definitely him. I tried to forget, tried to bury it like we buried the truth that night. But something about that photo, it stuck, like splinters under the skin. Every time I blinked, I saw the woods behind him. Not just trees, not just dark. A shape, tall, thin, watching. I told myself I imagined it. Then Jules called. We hadn't spoken in years, but I recognized her voice instantly. Except this time it was shaking. "He's in my dreams," she whispered. "He's in the woods again. Same spot, same hoodie. He doesn't move. He just waits." I didn't know what to say. I almost asked her if she was okay. Then she said something that froze me. "He knows I never found him." A week later, she was gone. They found her car at the edge of a forest preserve, still running. Driver's side door wide open. No footprints. No sign of struggle. Only a single piece of paper folded neatly on the front seat. "You're it." The guilt hit me hard. I hadn't thought about that night in years, not really. Not in daylight, but now it felt like a chain pulling tighter every time I breathed. Ben reached out next. First time in forever. He sounded hollow. "Don't sleep near windows," he said. "He watches. And if you see him, don't run. That's how he tags you." I asked him what he meant. He just hung up. A few days later, he was gone too. I started seeing the numbers then. In dreams, on receipts, spray painted on alley walls, countdowns. Always starting from 30, always slowing around 10, always stopping at 3. And every time they stopped, I felt it. Someone in the room, behind the mirror, under the bed, not moving, just waiting. And sometimes I'd hear leaves crunching where there shouldn't be leaves, breathing, wet, measured, then silence. The kind of silence that knows your name. I finally went back to Camp Grayson, or what was left of it. It had been closed for over a decade, boarded up, fenced off, posted with weather-beaten signs that warned of unstable grounds and trespassing fines. I climbed through anyway. Everything was decayed. The mess hall collapsed, cabins half swallowed by moss and time. The fire pit was still there though. So was the arch. And beyond it, the path, still splitting the trees like a scar. I stood at the edge for a long time. Then I heard it. 29, 28. The voice hadn't aged. It was still Danny, still counting, still waiting to be found. I stepped through. The arch hadn't changed. Still rusted, still crooked, still etched with that strange notch on the left beam, like someone tried to claw their way out. But beyond it, the forest wasn't the same. The moment I passed under, the air went dense. Not just heavy wrong. Like sound didn't carry the same. Like breath had to push through something thicker than air. The trees were closer than they should have been. Their branches tangled together, forming shapes that looked almost intentional. Some reached downward, others wrapped into coils. Watching, I walked slow, the countdown echoing in my ears. 17, 16. I wasn't being hunted, not exactly, but I was being measured. With every step, something behind the trees shifted, something big and patient. I called out his name, Danny. The forest swallowed it whole, not even an echo. Then I saw the hoodie. It was hanging on a branch, just ahead, perfectly still, despite the breeze that didn't touch anything else. Red, faded, soaked through, and beneath it boots, small, familiar, facing the wrong way. I didn't touch it, couldn't, because then I heard a whisper from behind me, not from the trees, from the ground. Found you. I turned, and there he was, but it wasn't Danny, not anymore. His eyes were gray, not light gray drained, like the color had been pulled out and replaced with fog. His skin hung loose, not like rot, like he'd been stretched, like something else was wearing him. He smiled, wide, too wide, and he spoke without moving his lips. You never looked hard enough. I backed up. My foot hit something soft. A hand, half buried in the leaves, not decayed, not fresh. Dozens of them, all small, all facing upward, all from kids who never made it back to the fire pit. The whisper came again, only now from everywhere, still hiding, still hiding, still hiding. I ran. Branches cut my arms. Roots grabbed my ankles, but I kept going. I could hear the countdown behind me again, faster this time, louder. 8, 7, 6, and under it the breathing, heavy, wet, close. 4, I hit the edge of the woods. 3, I dove through the arch. 2, nothing. Silence. I was out. Back at the clearing, the sun was up, but everything looked off. The mess hall wasn't ruined anymore. The cabins looked new. Fresh paint, camp flags fluttering. I stepped toward the fire pit and froze. There were kids, 10 of them, playing, laughing, counting. I tried to scream to warn them, but my voice caught in my throat, because on the far side, leaning against a tree, it was me, 12 years old, smiling, waiting, counting down. 3, even now, I don't know if I ever made it out, if I'm telling this or if he is, because the game never ends, and once you're in it, you don't win by hiding. You win by bringing more players in. When I got home, if I got home, things were wrong, subtle at first. My apartment was cleaner. My coffee mug was on the wrong side of the sink. The calendar had a camp reunion circled in red ink that I never marked. And then I saw the photo on my desk. It hadn't been there before, me and the others. That last summer, around the fire pit, laughing, marshmallows, smoke. But the photo, it was wrong. Danny wasn't in it. Not exactly. He was behind us, standing in the shadows, face hidden, arms at his side, wearing that soaked red hoodie. Same smile. Only this time, someone else was missing. Me. I turned the photo over. My hands were shaking. There was writing. Same dirt-smudged ink from the first one. Just 2 words. Not done. I don't leave my house now. Not at night. Not when it's quiet. Because that's when the game starts again. I've heard it in the hallway. I've heard it outside my window. The voice. The same damn voice. 30, 29. And worse, sometimes I hear it in recordings, in voicemail static, in the pause between radio stations. It's spreading. That's why I'm telling you, not to scare you, to warn you, because if you've listened this far, if you've heard the counting, then the game has already started for you too. And when it gets to 0, you're not the seeker. You're what's found. Story 2. They said he drowned, but I saw what pulled him under. They said he drowned. They used the word like a period, a clean end to a story they didn't want to keep telling, as if water could erase someone, as if it made sense that a 17-year-old boy could disappear in a lake only 12 feet deep without a sound. But I was there. I saw what pulled him under, and it wasn't the water. It was the last week of summer. We were camping at Larchwood Lake, a forgotten body of water upstate, surrounded by pine and silence. The kind of place that didn't exist on GPS anymore. The kind of place parents picked because it felt untouched, quiet, safe, honest. We were 4 of us that year. Me, Tyler, Marcy, and Sam. Sam was the one who went in. We'd been friends since 4th grade. He was always the loudest, the fastest to laugh, the last to leave the water. He had that kind of energy that made adults worry and girls lean closer. The lake loved him, or maybe it wanted him from the start. The morning started still. No breeze, no clouds. The kind of oppressive calm that makes you sweat in the shade. We spent the early hours skipping stones and tossing half-frozen sodas from the cooler. Tyler had brought a speaker, but it died just after noon. No warning. Sam stripped to his swim trunks and ran down the dock barefoot, cannonballed in with a yell. We waited for the splash. It came, but no laughter followed, no surface break, no sarcastic comeback, just silence, a still ripple, then nothing. At first, we thought he was screwing with us. Sam loved games like that, hold your breath, fake the float, scare someone into diving after you. But seconds stretched, then a minute. I stood up. The water was too flat. No bubbles, no motion. Just a vague shimmer, like the lake was holding its breath too. I jumped in. The cold hit like a slap, deeper than expected, darker too. The water was murky, thick with silt and decay. I dove down, eyes burning, hands outstretched, and then I saw it. Not Sam. It. Something pale coiling in the dark. Long, boneless, like rope soaked in milk. It moved without motion, a slither without ripple. It had him by the leg. Sam's eyes were open, mouth too. Bubbles streamed from him like a scream that wouldn't rise. I reached out and it turned. No face, just folds, writhing, shivering. But somehow I knew it saw me, felt me, smelled me, like it understood who I was, like it had been waiting for both of us. It yanked, and Sam vanished into the black. I surfaced screaming. Tyler dragged me onto the dock. Marcy was already dialing 911, but the call wouldn't go through. Static. No signal. No explanation. I kept saying his name, kept telling them what I saw, but they just stared at me, because I was shaking, because my hands were bleeding from something under the water, because they didn't see it. Only me. And they didn't want it to be true. They wanted drowned to mean something simple, something natural. But nothing about that lake was natural. Nothing about what took him made sense. And the worst part, I never heard a splash. Sam didn't thrash, didn't cry for help. He knew. He saw it too, and he never had a chance to scream. They dragged the lake for 2 days. Divers in black wetsuits, long aluminum poles, boats with sonar that clicked and whirred like nervous insects. They brought in dogs, a helicopter, even a priest. But they didn't find Sam. Not his body, not his trunks, not even a shoe. The sheriff called it an unfortunate drowning in low visibility conditions. Said maybe Sam got caught on an underwater tree, or panicked, or hit his head. They never found a tree. They never explained the blood on my palms. They never asked why I kept screaming that the lake had eyes. They wanted closure. I wanted truth. We left the day after they packed up the boats. Tyler wouldn't look at me. Marcy cried the whole ride home, but never said Sam's name. I didn't go back to school that fall. Didn't talk to anyone. I barely slept. Because every night I dreamed of the lake. Not water, depth, endless, crushing, silent. And somewhere below something pulsing, slow, patient. A living current of cold flesh and memory. And Sam, he was there too. But not as I remembered him. He moved like the thing that took him. Lips blue, skin stretched. No light in his eyes, only pressure. Like he was becoming part of it. It's been 13 years. I tried to move on. Different city, different life. I work nights, avoid deep water. Tell myself that sometimes people just vanish. But last week, I got a package. No return address, wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a VHS tape. I don't own a VCR, but something told me to find one. I did. Hooked it up in a cheap motel room with bad lighting and worse wallpaper. The tape started with static. Then the dock. That dock. Larchwood Lake. Empty. Still. The video shook like whoever was filming was hiding. Wind whispered through the mic. Then movement. A figure walking out of the trees. Barefoot. Dripping. Red trunks. Gray skin. Sam. He stopped at the edge of the dock, turned to the camera, and smiled. But it wasn't his smile. It was stretched. Too wide. Like his skin remembered what smiling used to feel like, but not how to do it anymore. Then the frame twisted, glitched. He opened his mouth. Black water poured out, and something else. Something pale, long, moving. The screen cut to black. I checked out of the motel an hour later, burned the tape. Didn't matter, because now, every time I close my eyes, I see the dock and him, standing just beneath the surface, waiting for me to come back. I didn't go back right away, but the lake came to me. It started with puddles, perfect circles of water on my apartment floor when it hadn't rained, under my bed, inside the closet, once on the ceiling. Then came the smell, algae and iron, and something older, something sweet and sour and rotting all at once. It clung to the air, to my clothes, to the back of my tongue like a film I couldn't scrape off. Then the dreams turned physical, waking up wet, not sweat-soaked, blankets wrung out, mattress ruined, my skin puckered and pruned like I'd spent hours underwater. And always in the dark, the sound of dripping. One drop, then another, then a hand pressing gently against the small of my back. I went back to Larchwood in October, not because I was brave, because I was worn down. It felt like if I didn't go, it would come the rest of the way. And this time I wasn't sure I'd come back from sleep. The camp was gone, burned down 2 summers ago. Arson, they said. Unsolved. But the dock was still there, somehow untouched. I stood at the edge for a long time, windless, cold. I called his name once. The lake didn't ripple, didn't answer. But something did rise, slowly, quietly. Not water. A shape. Not Sam. Not human. But wearing pieces. A mouth stretched into a perfect O of silence. A black pit where a chest should be. And in its arms, bones, small ones, multiple. I stepped back. It didn't move. But behind me, I heard footsteps. Not one set. Dozens. Children. Feet dragging in the leaves. Lips whispering wet syllables I couldn't understand. I turned nothing. Looked forward, gone. Just water again. Still. Waiting. I left something on the dock before I went. Something only Sam would recognize. A silver compass from our first year. The one he said always pointed toward home. I don't know what I expected. Forgiveness, peace. But the next morning I woke up with lake water in my mouth and the compass on my pillow, still wet, pointing at nothing. Even now I hear the dripping, even in cities, even on planes, even in dreams, because once the lake knows your name, it doesn't let go. You just keep floating closer, and when you finally reach the bottom, you'll understand. He didn't drown. He was taken, and the lake is still hungry. I started seeing him in reflections, not in mirrors, those are easy to avoid, in windows, in puddles, in the sheen of a car hood after rain. Always standing still, always a few feet behind me, half in frame, face obscured by shadow, or water, or distance, but always watching. I tried talking to a priest once. He listened, didn't laugh, didn't blink. When I finished, he said one thing. There are places where time doesn't move forward, only downward. He handed me a matchbook and said if it followed me home again, I'd have to choose fire or water. And then he left. He drowned 3 days later. No explanation. I haven't lit the matches. I don't know what I'm waiting for. Maybe for Sam to speak. Maybe for the thing behind his face to stop mimicking who he used to be. Because it does mimic. I've heard his voice through the vents at night, through the shower head, once through the drain. Come in. It's quiet now. Not begging, not pleading, just inviting. Like the lake speaks through him now. Like it wants me to say yes. But I know what happens when you say yes. I've seen the dreams, felt the pressure. The lake doesn't take you all at once. It softens you, makes you doubt, makes you thirsty for something deeper, for silence, for cold. And when you finally want it, that's when it pulls. There's only one thing I haven't tried. One final test. There's a dock miles from here. Different lake, different town. But I've been told it's connected, that they all are, that the water beneath is the same, a single mouth with 1,000 surfaces. And tonight, I'm going, not to run, not to fight, but to ask a question, to lean over the edge, and see if he's still looking up. Story 3, I heard screaming from the old counselor's cabin. They told us the cabin was off limits, not just in the usual way, like the dining hall after hours or the counselor's office where the logbooks were kept, but in a way that made your stomach twist a little when you passed it. It sat at the far end of the forest path, past the archery range and the broken-down canoe shed. Old sun-bleached, leaning slightly to one side like it had taken a hit it never recovered from. They called it Cabin 11, but no one stayed there, not anymore. We were 12 that summer, the age where everything felt like a dare, where fear was something you swallowed, laughed off, spat at in the dark. It was after lights out, late, the kind of late where the sky turns navy and the bugs grow quiet, where the trees stop moving, even if there's wind. We were telling stories in our bunk flashlights, under our chins, voices lowered just enough to feel important. And then we heard it. A scream, long, wet, not sharp like a movie scream, lower, heavier, like someone trying to force out sound from the bottom of their lungs. It came from cabin 11. We all froze. The sound was too real, too close. Then another voice, higher sobbing, stuttering, whispering, "Make it stop. Please, just make it stop." Then silence. The next morning, no one mentioned it. No counselors, no directors. No one acted like anything had happened. Breakfast was oatmeal and powdered eggs. The flag still rose at 8. The lake was still glassy and perfect. I asked our counselor Mark if anyone was using cabin 11. He stiffened, didn't blink. "That cabin's closed, always has been." Then he smiled too wide. Why I didn't answer? Didn't need to, because he already knew. Later that day I slipped away, past the canoes through the trees to where the path narrowed. Cabin 11 was older than the rest. Boards warped, door cracked near the base, windows black. No footprints, no light. But the door was open half an inch. Inside it smelled like mold and sap and something sour beneath it all, like sweat sealed in for years. Dust floated in shafts of light through the roof slats. And in the center of the room, carved into the floor, with something dull and determined, "Don't listen," I heard crying from the corner. Not loud, not sudden, just there, soft, breathing between the sobs. I turned. Nothing there, but the wall was darker. A shape in the wood, an outline of a person, arms curled, tight, head down. Like someone had been burned into the wall, not drawn, not painted, pressed, embedded. Then another scream, this one inches from my ear. I ran, didn't stop until I reached the field, didn't look back. And when I told the others what I saw, what I heard, no one believed me, except Jenna. She looked pale, shaking. "I heard it too," she said, "but that wasn't a scream. It was remembering." I asked her what she meant. She didn't answer. She never came to breakfast again. The counselors said Jenna left early. Family emergency, picked up late at night. No one saw the car. No one saw her leave, but her stuff was still in the cabin, unpacked, unzipped, her bunk unmade, shoes under the bed, half-kid sandwich in her locker, and a picture taped to the wall, her and her sister arms around each other, smiling like this summer meant something. Gone. And I knew. The cabin took her. That night I heard it again. Not the scream, the sobbing. Closer now. Not from the woods, from underneath my bed. I didn't move, just stared at the ceiling. Counted breaths. But with each one, the sobbing grew clearer. "Make it stop." And then the bunk creaked. Something was shifting below me. Not fast, not aggressive, just enough to let me know it was there, listening. In the morning I found dirt on the floor. Dark, wet, not from the trail, not from shoes. It led to the wall and stopped. No one else saw it, or pretended not to. Even Tyler, who never shut up, barely looked at me all day. But that night, he whispered in the dark. She came back. I asked who. He didn't answer, but he cried until dawn. I snuck back to cabin 11 the next day. Couldn't not. The door was open wider now. Inside, something had changed. More carvings. Walls scratched through the paint, all the same word, over and over, in jagged slashes. Listen. In the corner where the dark shape had been burned into the wood, there was a hollow now. Small. Too small. Like a child had curled up there and sank. I stepped closer. It wasn't empty. Hair. Human hair. Stuck to the wood like it had been there for years. And a tooth. Still white. Still clean. Like it had just come loose. Then footsteps behind me. I turned. Nothing. Then the voice right beside my ear. She listened too long. I ran again, but this time the door didn't close behind me. It stayed open, inviting, like it knew I'd be back. I stopped sleeping. Not just because of the sounds, though they never stopped, but because of the feeling. Like I wasn't alone. Like something was lying awake beneath me, beside me, inside the walls. At night, I'd hear breathing from the ceiling. Not rats, not wind. Breathing, slow, damp, measured, and whispers underneath it. But they weren't words. They were memories. Half-spoken pieces of sentences. Regret. Desperation. Didn't mean to. She said she wouldn't scream. No, 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 no. Voices layered on top of each other like whoever lived in Cabin 11 never really left. Just sank. 2 days after I found the tooth mark disappeared. Counselor Mark, the one who smiled too wide when I asked about the cabin. He didn't show up to roll call. The camp nurse said he probably got turned around on a hike. But I saw his flashlight that night, blinking on and off through the trees, just beyond Cabin 11, and a hand briefly pressed against the window from the inside. But when I got there, it was gone. That was the last time anyone went near the cabin during daylight. The path became overgrown overnight, like the woods were trying to swallow it again. But the screams didn't stop. If anything, they got louder. Now others were hearing them too. From the lake, from the trees, from under the floorboards. I tried to leave. I packed my bag, told the counselor I was homesick, that I had family waiting. She nodded too quickly. Her fingers were trembling. She didn't ask who was picking me up. She just said, okay, and wrote something on her clipboard. But no one came. And when I asked to use the camp phone, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, we don't call out after dark. That night, the power went out. A storm was coming. Thunder rolled in slow and steady. Too slow, like it wasn't weather. Like the earth itself was groaning. And I knew if I didn't go back to Cabin 11, something worse would come to me. It already had once. I still wake up with dirt in my sheets. So I went, alone, no flashlight. Just a matchbook I found under my pillow. Only 3 left. The first match lit the hallway. The floor groaned under my feet. The shadows moved before I did. The second match revealed the writing, not carved this time, etched in bone. On the back wall, it remembers sound. I struck the third match and saw them, all of them, the ones who never left, pressed into the walls, faces stretching forward, mouths open, screaming in absolute silence. Then the match went out, and something took a step toward me. I didn't scream. I wanted to. My lungs ached for it, but something in me knew, deep, instinctual, ancestral, that if I made a sound, even a breath too sharp, it would take me. Not kill, take. The kind of taking you don't come back from. The kind that rewrites your name in a voice that isn't yours. So I stayed still, in the dark, in the old counselor's cabin that breathed like a lung around me, and I listened. There were footsteps circling, but not on the floor. Inside the walls, each step soft, deliberate, like someone pacing between boards, dragging their fingers through time. Then a whisper, right by my ear. She called to me, so I came. It wasn't a voice I recognized, but the emotion behind it. It sounded like hunger, not for food, for pain. Remembered pain. The room grew colder. My teeth chattered, but I clenched my jaw shut. Tears slid down my face, slow and hot. And then, from the far corner, I saw it. Not a body, not a ghost. A shape, tall, stretched, skin like bark, peeled back over meat. Its face wasn't a face, just layers of mouths. Some human, some not. All silent, all open. And then a scream tore through the cabin. Not from it, from me. I couldn't stop it. The sound tore out of my throat like it had been buried there for years. The thing heard. Every mouth twisted toward me, and it moved. I ran, blind, crying, half dead already. I didn't care where, I just needed to get out. But the woods didn't end. The trail bent in on itself like the camp was folding inward. Cabin 11 was behind me, then beside me, then ahead, always ahead, like it moved with me, like I had never left at all. I woke up on the dirt floor, covered in splinters and blood and silence. But the cabin was empty. No shape, no mouths, no screaming, only one sound now, a low, slow breath, drawn from the floorboards themselves, and on the wall, written fresh in something too red to be paint. Now you remember too. Camp closed the next week. They said it was budget cuts. I know better. I carry better. Because I still hear the footsteps. Still smell that sour rot before sleep. Still wake up some nights with my mouth open and no sound coming out. Like something is pulling the scream back down. I haven't spoken since that night. And if you ever hear sobbing from the woods, don't listen, because that's how it starts. And once Cabin 11 remembers your voice, it never forgets. Story 4. My summer camp was shut down after one night. We arrived at Camp Ashwood just before dusk. The sky was still glowing with the tail end of a too hot day, the kind of orange that feels like it's hiding something behind it. The van ride had been loud kids, chattering, singing, trying to be brave. But when the trees closed in around us, thick and knotted, like hands pressed together to block something out, everyone got quiet, and when the gate appeared, we all stared. It was older than it should have been. Stone pillars on either side, cracked, and mossy iron letters overhead that had once spelled Ashwood, but now read A-W-D, rusted away like the rest of the sign had simply given up. The road beyond was narrow, gravel, faint tire tracks, as if no one had driven it in years. That was the first red flag, but not the last. They told us it was a soft launch, a trial run for a new campsite. Fewer kids, just one night to see how things went before the full summer sessions began. We were the test group, 20 of us, 10 boys, 10 girls, 2 counselors. We'd been given shirts, schedules, smiles, but everything felt off, like they were pretending this was normal, like they knew it wasn't. The cabins were clean enough, but too clean, like they'd been scrubbed in a hurry, bleached, erased, windows painted shut. No Wi-Fi, no service, no maps, just a giant corkboard in the mess hall with a list of names and a single sentence beneath them, lights out at 10:00 sharp. No reason, no explanation. And the counselors Dan and Miss Claire kept smiling, that same wide, tired smile you see on people too close to something dangerous, like they couldn't afford to break character. That night we had dinner, canned chili, dry bread, water with lemon slices that looked like they'd been soaking all day. Kids joked, laughed, tried to make it feel like any other camp. But the air felt wrong, heavy, like the woods were leaning closer, like we were being measured. After dinner, they gathered us around a fire. Dan told a story, something about a girl who went missing in the woods nearby. Just a ghost tale, he said, but his eyes were glassy, far away. Miss Claire didn't speak. She just stared at the tree line behind us, like she expected it to speak first. At 9:58, she stood. "No more stories," she said. "Everyone back to your cabins, now." Someone laughed. She didn't. I remember looking at my watch, 10 on the dot. And then we heard it. A tone, low, constant, like a siren underwater, buzzing just below hearing. The ground trembled. Not an earthquake, something deeper, rhythmic, like a breath. And then the screaming started. At first we thought it was a prank, a sound effect, maybe a cheap scare to keep us from wandering off. But then the trees moved, Not the wind moved, bent, like something huge passed between them without touching a single branch. Like the forest itself shifted to let it through. The fire snapped out. 1 second it was crackling, the next gone. No smoke, no spark, just absence. We froze. All 20 of us. Miss Claire screamed for us to run. Her voice cracked in a way no adult's voice ever should. I looked back and saw her grab Dan's arm, shoving him toward the cabins. Then she turned to face the trees, like she knew what was coming, like she knew she had to stay. We ran. Every footstep was a thunderclap. Every breath felt like it wasn't ours. Somebody was crying, someone else was praying, and behind it all that tone, low, piercing, deep inside the skull, like pressure before a storm, but inside you. I remember reaching our cabin, slamming the door, locking it. Tyler threw himself against the window and screamed, "Where's Claire?" We didn't answer. We didn't have to, because something was moving outside, big, slow, something wet dragging across the path, and a sound like metal grinding through teeth. Then came the knock. Once, on the door. Light, soft, polite. Then a voice. Let me in. Not Claire. Not Dan. Not human. The words were correct. The grammar clean. The tone even. But behind it, there was nothing. No soul, just mimicry. Like a recording trying to remember how a person is supposed to sound. We didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't exist. We just listened as it spoke again. Let me in. Then silence. And just when we thought it was gone, we heard Claire whispering from inside the cabin. She stood in the corner, facing the wall, hands at her sides. No sound, no movement, just standing. None of us saw her come in. She wasn't there when we locked the door. She wasn't there when the knocking started, but now she was, and something about the shape of her was wrong. Too still, too long, like someone had drawn the idea of a person, but couldn't quite get the edges right. Her shirt was soaked, not with blood, with something thicker. It dripped onto the floorboard, slow, steady, like the tone outside had followed her in and made her liquid. Tyler reached toward her. Miss Claire. She didn't move, not until he touched her shoulder. Then she turned, and her face wasn't a face. It looked like hers, but not from the outside. It looked like someone had taken a mold of her expression in the middle of a scream and pressed it outward from the inside of her skull. And her mouth, still open, was full of teeth that weren't hers, child-sized, hundreds of them. We ran again, didn't matter where, into the woods, into the dark, just away. We didn't stop until we reached the mess hall, lights still on. No power, no generator, we could hear just light humming like nothing outside existed anymore. That's where we found Dan, curled up under a table, muttering, fingers bleeding. He'd carved something into the floor over and over again. It ceased sound. He looked up at us, eyes red, face gray, and he said, "If you make a sound, it knows your shape." Then he pointed at the back door and whispered, "They opened the wrong door, not the camp's, the one underneath it." We didn't know what he meant. We thought he was just broken, snapped by the fear, by the scream, by whatever had taken Claire and stretched her into something else. But then the lights in the mess hall began to pulse. Not flicker, pulse, like breathing, like the building itself was in it. And then came the whisper, not from outside, from beneath the floorboards. Low, wet, endless. Names, our names, all 20. Not shouted, not growled, whispered over and over with perfect pronunciation. Like the earth beneath the camp was learning us. Dan started sobbing. He pressed his hands to his ears and screamed, "Don't answer, don't speak, don't think." But it was too late. because some of us had already whispered back, not intentionally, just reactions. A terrified gasp, a whimper, a whispered prayer, and that was enough. The tone returned louder, now closer, pushing through our bones, and then the floor cracked. A seam split straight down the middle, from one end of the mess hall to the other. Darkness poured out, not black void, and from it a shape began to rise. It wasn't a creature, it wasn't a person. It was a wound, a vertical gash in the air, filled with teeth and sound and wet heat. And one by one, the kids who had spoken were lifted, not grabbed, not dragged, just lifted by something we couldn't see. Their bodies went stiff, eyes rolled back, and then they were gone, swallowed into the wound. Dan ran straight into it, screaming his own name, like if he said it loud enough, it would forget the rest of us. It didn't. We made it to the gate by morning. It was open, waiting, and when we crossed through, the tone stopped, like a breath held. No one ever spoke of it again. Camp Ashwood was condemned that week. Unsafe grounds, they said. Freak sinkholes, gas leaks, something explainable, but it wasn't the ground. It was the thing beneath it, the thing they accidentally fed with names and stories and screams. Even now I hear the tone in my dreams, and sometimes I wake up with someone else's name on my tongue. Story 5. We weren't supposed to enter the forest, but we did. They told us the forest was off limits, not in the usual half-hearted way, but in the tone of voice that made every hair on your arm curl. The counselors warned, never go beyond the trail markers. They didn't say what would happen if we did. They couldn't. I was 14, sleeping in cabin 3 at Camp Willow Creek, a place that felt safe until it didn't. The forest stretched beyond the border of the camp trees, thick and dark as ink untouched for years. They painted signs, boundaries keep you safe, but those didn't stop the curiosity. It started with a dare, a whisper in the bunk one night when the wind thrashed against the windows. Bet you won't go to the old trail. Just 10 words, enough. So we slipped out, 3 of us, Silas Jenner and me, Mia. We didn't grab flashlights. We didn't plan. We just walked. Soon enough, we crossed the painted lines. The air changed. Lighter, quiet. You could feel breath settle in your lungs differently, as if everything inside the trees inhaled with us. That was when we heard it. At first, a whisper, then footsteps, and not ours. Slow, calculated, following. We stopped. Just a few feet in the forest door, shut behind us. Silence closed in, and the whisper became a voice. Not human, deep and broken, repeating one phrase over and over. You weren't meant to come. That phrase echoed in the forest like it was carved into the ground. The deeper we went, the quieter the world became. No crickets, no rustling, no breeze. Even our footsteps made no sound. The dirt beneath us had turned soft like walking on wet velvet. Our shoes didn't sink, but there were give like something beneath. The soil was pulsing slowly, alive. Jenna was the first to stop. There's something wrong with the trees, she said. She was right. They weren't just tall. They weren't just old. They were wrong. Not growing upward. They leaned in, all of them, as if drawn to some invisible point at the forest's heart. And their bark, it wasn't just rough. It was scarred. Long, deep gouges down each trunk, like they'd been marked. Some had symbols, circular. Others had faces. Human faces. Not carved, not natural. Pressed, like someone's last expression had been stamped into the bark with unbearable force. Silas still didn't believe. He laughed, called it a prank, said the camp staff must have set it up to scare us. Then something moved, not around us, below. The ground beneath his feet sagged, then pulsed upward, like a breath. Silas jumped back. We stared. The earth where he'd stood was bleeding. Not mud, thick dark red liquid, seeping up between the roots. The forest whispered again. Not words. Names. Ours. Soft. Deliberate. Jenna grabbed my hand. Her fingers were ice. We turned. We ran, but the trees had closed. The trail was gone. We weren't supposed to enter the forest. But we did. And now, it knew we were here, and it had already started learning us. We didn't speak. Couldn't. Every word felt like it might echo the wrong way, might wake something. We moved as fast as the warped terrain would allow. Every direction we turned, the trees grew tighter, thicker bark, brushing our shoulders like walls of damp muscle. Jenna whispered, "I think we're walking in circles." She was wrong. Circles would have made sense. This was a spiral. Every turn drew us deeper, not just into the woods, but into something beneath the woods. Like the forest was only the surface, a mask, and we'd slipped through the skin. We came to a clearing, a single stone in the center, tall and thin, too symmetrical to be natural. And around it, shoes, old, new, children's, adults, scattered in a perfect ring. Silas stepped forward, reached out to touch the stone. I tried to stop him. Too late. The second his fingers brushed it, he froze, then fell. No sound, no breath. Just crumpled like a puppet with its strings cut. Jenna screamed. The forest answered. A groan deep and resonant rolled through the trees. Not like a voice, like a stomach. The ground beneath Silas opened. Roots reached up. Not Vine's fingers. They dragged him down. His body didn't twitch, didn't fight. Like he'd already been taken, already hollow, gone. Jenna and I ran. We didn't know where, just away. Branches clawed at our skin. Every direction led somewhere worse. Twice we ended up back at the clearing. But the stone was taller now, and there were more shoes. One pair was Jenna's. She didn't notice, but I did. And when I looked down, my socks were wet. We stumbled onto what looked like a trail, but it wasn't the trail we came in on. This one was too clean. No leaves, no branches, no animal prints. Just a path of black earth unnaturally smooth, as if something huge and heavy had dragged itself across it over and over again. And down the middle, embedded into the dirt, were handprints. Thousands, pressed deep. Some child-sized, some massive, all pointing the same direction, forward. Jenna hesitated. "We should go back," she whispered, but there was no back anymore. Only the spiral, only forward. So we followed the handprints, and after what felt like hours, the trees broke. We stepped into another clearing. This one wasn't empty. A structure stood at the center, circular, built from old wood and stone, twisted together like muscle and bone. A ring of standing figures surrounded it, not statues, people, or what was left of them. Their bodies were rooted into the ground, faces stretched upward, mouths open in perfect O's of silent agony. Their skin had turned the color of bark. They were alive, but not moving, like the forest had assimilated them, like it had grown them. Jenna fell to her knees. She was whispering. I leaned closer. She was repeating something. Over and over, they see through silence. They feed on noise. They bury what remembers. It wasn't her voice. Not really. It was deeper, older, coming through her, like she was just a mouth now. Then her body jerked, arched backward, and something inside her split. Her eyes rolled white, hands clenched to the soil, and the roots began to rise, not from the ground, from her spine. I should have run. I didn't. I watched, because something was holding me there, not fear, recognition. Because in that moment I remembered something I was never supposed to. I'd been here before, not in this life, but another. And I had fed it once. The trees groaned. The sky turned the color of old blood. And I heard the voice again. Closer now. You weren't meant to come. Then softer. But now, you never leave. I ran, or I thought I did, but the forest doesn't work like the world outside. Distance doesn't matter. Time doesn't pass. Direction lies. Every tree I passed felt like the same one. Every breath I took tasted like bark and rot and copper. And every time I looked back, Jenna was behind me. Not walking, not moving, just there, rooted, watching, her mouth still open, still whispering. Eventually I stopped, not out of choice, because the forest stopped me. I stepped forward, and the ground rose up to meet me. Roots wound around my ankles. Branches bent down not to strike, but to listen, to lean closer, to remember. And in front of me, a mirror. Not glass, water. Still, perfect, black. It hadn't rained, there were no lakes, but here it was, a circle of reflection where the dirt should be. And in it, not my face, but another, staring up, mouth open, eyes wide, with the exact expression I wore in that moment, only aged, decayed. Mine. I dropped to my knees, and in the silence I heard it speak, not from above, not from below, from within. A voice that had always been with me, buried so deep I'd mistaken it for thought. It said, "You stepped into the memory of the forest, and now you are the memory." That was when I saw the truth. Every child who wandered in, every footstep off trail, every scream swallowed by leaves. They weren't gone. They were part of it, stitched into the canopy, echoed through the wind, carved into the stone at the forest's heart. Not forgotten, rewritten. I felt the roots wrap around my ribs. They weren't tight. They were gentle, cradling, welcoming. And the last thing I remember before my mouth filled with moss was that it didn't feel like dying. It felt like returning. We weren't supposed to enter the forest, but we did, and the forest was hungry. Now, it knows my name, and if you listen closely in the quiet, it might whisper yours next. Even now, if you close your eyes and listen, you might still hear them counting. Not to 10, not for a game, but for you. If you crave more true horror that should have stayed buried, subscribe now to True Ghost Vault. We'll keep the fire burning until you're ready to step into the dark again.